Hey guys, how's it going and welcome back. Well, first thing you notice, drive says external on it. Where's my internal drive gone? Oh, it's here, don't worry, it's still kicking around. So we go to Finder Preferences, we click on Hard Disks, there's our internal drive. That's our 256 gig SSD that came with this little laptop. Now this is the base model error, as many of you guys know already, right? I bought the bottom of the barrel. And you know my reasons, right? Prove a point, and also it makes a great emergency backup system for me should anything happen to my Mini. And I'm actually liking this thing. I use it quite often on my Lazy Boy, answering emails to you guys, checking on other emails, doing my Facebook thing, you know, that sort of deal, right? And I might even watch the odd YouTube video during a commercial before my show comes back. It kind of depends, right? But it works for me, right? Because I'm minimalizing what I'm doing because I know I have a huge lack of RAM going on. Why is my mouse, what happened to my universal control now? Come on, seriously? You're gonna do this to me. Universal control, displays, preferences, universal, yes. It's active, my wireless is active. There we go. Glitched out. Anyways, I guess if it sits too long, it sits down. But anyways, so I can show my hard disk. Now, that is just gonna keep my main drive hidden. I can still put external drives on, leave that hidden. They're gonna show up, right? CD-ROM burner, it's gonna show up. Flash drives, they're gonna show up. So leave this option the way it is. Now, if you want CDs and DVD drives, if you're gonna plug one in to burn something, right? Not many people use those burners anymore, but hey, we still have them. Then you can. So, this is how I have it now. So I've got this Western Digital. This is an SSD NVMe, right? Now, this is the Western Digital My Passport drive, and it's a Type-C to Type-C connection. Now, I did have to buy another Type-C enclosure just to get a longer cable, because this thing only comes with like a 4-inch little short cable. It's pathetic, right? Anyway, the drive cost me 160 bucks Canadian at Best Buy. And it's rated for 1050 megabits per second read speed and up to 1000 megabits per second write speed. Now, obviously, we're not going to see those readings in the real world. So if we go here and we speed test it, this is what we can expect having a Type-C drive of this rated speed plugged into a Thunderbolt port on a Mac. It's not going to get any faster. So why do we not see the actual up to speeds? Well, in the most ideal situation, think, a powered box, we would probably see those speeds. The problem here is the Thunderbolt port only puts out 900 milliamps. That drive is wanting well over 2 to 2.5 amps. Though it does run on less, it will also run warm. Okay, like that's not hot, but it's pretty freaking warm. Okay, so with the lack of power, I mean that's a bit of a strain, right? This is probably why you should plug into a powered hub that can supply you enough power, which would probably increase the speed a tiny little bit, but you're not going to get much more out of this thing only because it's a Type-C drive with a Type-C cable, and speeds are limited on those Type-C buses, regardless of the fact that you're plugged into a Thunderbolt port. The Thunderbolt port works dual purpose. It works as a Thunderbolt port for Thunderbolt devices, including drives that are Thunderbolt, which will give you Thunderbolt speeds. Okay, and your speeds are going to vary depending on whether you're running a powered external Thunderbolt drive or an unpowered one. Okay, powered ones are better. They will be much faster. Even using the exact same NVMe stick, you would see more speed out of a powered external box than you would as having that same drive unit in an external Thunderbolt non-powered case, which would give you much slower speeds. But at least you would definitely get some much faster speeds, that's for sure. We've discovered that already with my NVMe drive that is sitting inside my my QuizLab dock, okay, that drive is rated for 3,300 megabits per second read, 3,000 megabits per second write, though we're not even getting anywhere close to those speeds, like phenomenally slower speeds. Part of that is due to the lack of amperage being supplied to the hub. I've only got 3 amps going to it. But the other problem is it's also in a Type-C bus. As long as it's in a Type-C bus, I'll never even see 1,000 out of that 3,000. So it's kind of a waste of money buying a 3,000 megabit per second NVMe, throwing it into an external dock, because you're not going to see those speeds, right? These are not Thunderbolt docks. These are Type-C docks. Right? If you had a Thunderbolt dock, you would see a much higher speed rating, but you still wouldn't see those actual speeds. Now, when I had that drive in my PC tower clipped direct to my motherboard, I was seeing very close to those speeds. Now, the internal drives on the MacBook Air, the MacBook Pro with Touch Bar, the iMac, as well as the Mac Mini, these drives all run out at around 2,900 plus megabits per second as internal drives. They're really fast. The Studios, they're really super fast. And as such, so are your Pro or level 14-inch and 16-inch MacBooks. Those drives are also screaming fast as compared to these. But your internal drives that are built into the boards are always going to be faster than external Type-C NVMEs, regardless, right? However, there is enough speed at this speed rating to cover me even at 12K footage at DCI 24 in Blackmagic RAW, but forget ProRes, and I'm not sure what the minus signs mean in this. I'm going to have to look that up. But as far as being absolutely glitch-free everywhere across the board, we can do 4K 25 frames per second in Blackmagic RAW, ProRes 422 HQ, and H.265. Now the file type I use is actually H.265, and that'll also allow me, I can go Blackmagic RAW or H.265 up to 8K at 60 frames per second, or I can do Blackmagic RAW at 12K 24 frames per second, have absolutely zero issues with this drive. So that's actually, for what I do as a YouTuber, and the fact that my camera can only go to 4K anyways, I'm perfectly fine doing this as an external setup. Now, I've increased my storage to now 1 terabyte from the 256, and my external is also now my boot drive. It's doing both. So now I can load this up like a normal everyday computer, leave it as a desktop setup. I can run the computer to my 32-inch display, because the dongle I have plugged in is a powered dongle, which also has Type A ports. It has my card readers there. It also has an HDMI port on it, so I can go to a bigger screen, and voila, I've got a full-fledged desktop, but in a MacBook Air laptop. But then I unplug all that junk, take it with me, reboot the computer right from the internal drive. Now, here's the thing. When you set up the external drive as your now boot drive, what you're going to find happening is when you unplug that and you want to go back to your internal drive that still has all of its information there that you left there, which is the smart way to do it, including your OS, it will give you an Apple ID little error thing that you're going to have to fix, okay? It's probably just a login thing to rezap the PRAM to say, hey, we're running the internal setup again, not external, because it knows there's a change and you have to correct that. Now, if you click the later button so you don't correct it, it's fine. It's not going to stop you from using your computer as normal, right? And the advantage to hitting the later button is that as soon as you plug your external drive back in, when you get back home or get back from your lazy boy and into here again, it's not going to glitch you out with that Apple ID thing when you use your external as your boot drive again. But you will have to go through your startup device manager in your system settings and select the external as your boot, reboot the computer from your external, it fires right up. Now, loading times, okay? When you're using the internal, it's like you can't even sneeze and the thing's ready to sign in. With going with this particular drive that I've chosen, because it's what I have handy, and seeing with these speeds, the boot time is a little bit slower. Not a whole lot, but it is a bit slower. But as far as, running programs go, I mean, they still fire up like freaking fast. Like, we're still getting really amazing load times with having this drive as our external. That's great. I mean, I'm quite happy with the results this way. Even if I go and fire up iMovie, for example, boom, it's there. Drag, drop, boom, boom, do my thing, export it, whatever I'm going to do, type of thing. I mean, I'm not getting any lag there, which is great, okay? I've got 8 gigs of RAM. Now, this is something that I really would like to stress to everybody. If you're going to buy any Mac computer these days, especially M1 technology, right? You're going to have, you should actually go to 16 gigs RAM. If you want 10 years out of this thing, you want 10 years out of any M1 first release version or any Mac period, you need that 16 gigs of RAM as a minimum starting point, okay? You should have a minimum of 512 gigs of hard drive space, or half a terabyte, right? I have a half a terabyte by 16 gig configuration in my Mini. I've never run out of RAM. I've run things up as high as 12 gigs of RAM being used. I still got 4 gigs. I am not going into swap. I am not getting video glitches. No hassles, okay, with video editing, because I'm not running out of RAM. But I also still have over 330 gigs free. Mind you, I do have to have the dock on there with the 2 half terabyte drives, and I had to take the majority of my software and put it onto the external drives and run it from there to keep the space free. So I can do any video editing that I ever am going to want to do, even in high level 4K. I can do that with that 300 gigs free, okay? So, if I come across a problem down the road where that half a terabyte is getting a little too small for stuff, then at least I could go with a large external Thunderbolt drive, which is what I would do with my Mini. I would go Thunderbolt with it for sure. I would get a powered Thunderbolt drive that's capable of reaching speeds of 3,000 to 4,000 megabits per second, like the internal does, almost 3,000 megabits per second. I would want those same speed advantages, because those speed advantages are going to allow you to do higher and higher level footage. You need drive speed to avoid the glitches. You need RAM to avoid the glitches. It's not just about your processor and your GPU. It's everything combined, right? So you have to remember that. But nothing less than a 16 by 512, ideally, okay? Now, I realize too, when it comes to buying computers, I mean, Mac computers are expensive. This is $1,300 as a base bare bone model. But if you went to the 16 gigs of RAM, that's $250 more. That brings you to $1,549. And if you can get by sketching it with the 256 as kind of like just emergency portable use, but you also want to use this as a desktop, then get like a 1 terabyte drive like I just did. And that's only $160 for that drive that I bought, okay? And that gives me a terabyte, good enough speeds to do the majority of the stuff I at least do, okay? Now, unless you're a professional videographer, etc., you're a high-end level YouTuber, I mean, you don't need the high-end gear unless you're doing that, right? In which case, you're not buying a MacBook Air, okay? You're buying a Mac Mini, you're buying an iMac, you're buying a Mac Studio, okay? Mac Studio is preferred. You're buying the high-level M1 Max laptop, 14 or 16 inches, or the Mac or the M1 Pro laptop if you're a high-level doer. But if you're not like that, and you're kind of more amateur hour, or you are a YouTuber, you definitely need that 16 by half a terabyte as a minimum. Now, my Mini is my main desktop system, But if anything happens to my Mini, I know no matter what, I can get by and sneak by with this thing with its current setup, especially now that I have that terabyte as my boot drive. I know that I'm good for OS updates. I know I'm good to throw a whack load of programs on there and games and other stuff, more so than what I can do on my internal, because that 256, I got the exact same stuff on it as I do on this, except with this I have almost, I got over 800 gigs free, where my internal 256, I only have 130 gigs free. Great for emergency stuff, but not good for doing anything high level. Okay, so that's the thing here. Now, going with Apple's 1 terabyte of storage is $500. Okay, now that's still going to give you your up to 3,000 megabit per second read-write speeds too. So it's actually kind of worth going to the Apple one and leaving everything internal with that 1 terabyte, and and the 16 gigs of RAM in there. And by the time you do that, I mean, you are up to $2,049. Now, for an extra $450, you could go into the 14-inch M1 Pro, which is going to give you the same CPU, but it's going to give you a higher level GPU. It'll give you a 16 gig of RAM that can go to 32 gig. It'll give you a half a terabyte that can now go up to 8 terabyte. Okay? But it's another $450. So you're still saving money here by going by 16 by 1 terabyte. This is definitely very ideal. Okay, because none of the other M1 systems can go past 16 gigs of RAM even, let alone 2 terabyte of hard drive storage, until you get to the 14 and 16 inch MacBooks and the new Studios, which can cost you some big money. Okay, and like I said, unless you're a pro, you don't need that kind of equipment. You can get along just snazzy fine with this stuff, whether it's the Mini, the iMac, this one, or the Mac Pro with Touch Bar. But you should actually have that 16 gig of RAM for sure, and at least even if you went to a half a terabyte of hard drive space, you're at $1,800 with a half a terabyte by 16 gig of RAM in this MacBook. Now that's Canadian dollars, of course, okay? So that's beneficial, and you'll still have over 330 gigs free, setting it up identical to mine, but of course we're all different, right? But if you did need to have more storage capability than even half a terabyte, and you wanted to use that external storage also as your boot drive, you can do it, because I am right now. Okay, my main drive is hidden away so that I don't mess with it even accidentally, but I can show it on the desktop if I want to. Okay, I just choose not to, so this way it doesn't screw me up. Because when I see Macintosh HD as a name, I think, oh, that's my boot drive. Well, now I've just called this one external for the time being. But if I want to, I can change the name of this drive to anything that I want. So if I want to change it from external and I want to call it Mac HD even, I can do that. Or I can go Macintosh and then go HD. Call it X-Boot or whatever. Whatever I want to call it, I can call it, right? I can name it any way I want. I can change the icon look to look like Bart Simpson if I want to. Nice thing about Macs, you can do anything you want pretty well. Anyways, this is a great ideal setup, okay? And I think even with the 8 gigs of RAM that I have, I gotta watch what I run so I can avoid that SSD swap space. Because, see, the swap space, guys, uses your drive as what's called virtual memory, okay? That's what it is. It's virtual memory. So when you run out of regular system RAM to run crap, it's going to go right to that hard drive and use it for extra memory to run programs. That is how it actually works in the real world, regardless of how other people have put it out to you. That's how it works. So that technology has been fine with HDDs, but we always took the massive performance hits on HDDs as it was. I mean, even booting from an HDD takes like 3-4 minutes, right? Booting from these SSDs is like a couple of milliseconds. It's friggin' nuts, right? So our computers actually have a life now. But when it comes to the SSDs though, the technology in SSDs currently, at least stuff that's publicly knowledgeable, okay, to us, they cannot handle SSD swap on a daily basis without burning out. You're gonna, if you went into swap all the time, right, every day, you would burn out your SSD drive in less than a year, okay, easily. If you're a very, very sparse, occasional user, 4, 5, 6 years is not out of the question, okay? But if you're going into it often, okay, maybe it's not every day, maybe it's several times a month though that it happens, you're still going to burn out that drive within 1 to 2, maybe even tops 3 years, you know? It's going to cook. And there is no replacing the drives in these computers. It's all on one chip, right? So that can be a real huge problem there. But if you want to save your SSD for your internal, then just use an external drive as a boot drive too, which is another option. It's just a little bit inconvenient on a laptop for laptop portability to be hauling around an external drive as a boot drive. It's kind of like pointless at that point, right? But anyways, so this is what I've got for you guys. I wanted to show you some speed testing. I want to talk about this a little bit more. Also show you this thing running off my Western Digital, my Passport drive. This is my boot drive. And it's working quite well. You know, you're not going to see the speeds that the drives register only because they're up to ratings. It just means there's potential to get to those speeds. But Type-C is not the world's best for speed compared to Thunderbolt. But even Thunderbolt drives, you're not going to get fast Thunderbolt drives until you go into high-end powered Thunderbolt drives, in which case you are far cheaper to either go with the Apple internal solution, pay that money, because it will be cheaper in the long haul, or you go to an external Thunderbolt. You're going to pay a bit more money, but you can actually see speeds far faster than the internal that Apple would offer, okay? So it's kind of your choice on how you want to do things in the long haul. If you have any questions, definitely leave them in the comments below. I'll do the very best I can to answer them for you. In the meantime, hey, if you're not subscribed, please do so. Smash the bell for notifications. And if you've got other interests, check my channel. It's variety-based, so there's thousands of videos to keep you guys entertained. See ya!